Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Thank you. I once told you that there was a ruthless conspiracy waged against our country, and today I would like to explain what it was. This conspiracy involves the rigging of the gold and silver markets in order to control our unbacked fiat monetary system. My story begins, like most monetary stories, in 1913 with the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, when gold and silver were still the most valued monetary assets in the world. As was outlined by G. Edward Griffin in The Creature from Jekyll Island, the monetary power of the United States of America was literally stolen from the people and handed over to a group of powerful European banking families, and is still under their control to this day. They run their U.S. operations under the auspice of the Federal Reserve Act. Of course, there is nothing federal about the U.S. Federal Reserve in that it is not part of our government, and there are no reserves to speak of other than the right to create the U.S. dollar out of thin air. Although their mandate is to maintain price stability, over the past 100 years that they have been in charge of the U.S. dollar, it has lost over 98% of its value. This, my friends, is a hidden inflation tax on the citizens of the United States as well as the rest of the world that holds U.S. dollars. The beginnings of large-scale physical gold manipulations come from an incredible gold discovery that is almost too wild to believe, until you check the facts. After World War II, a vast hoard of gold, mostly stolen from other Asian countries, held by the Treasury of Japan, was discovered hidden in the Philippines by a staff member of General Charles Willoughby, who was General MacArthur's chief of intelligence. This gold was hidden in over 175 sites across the Philippine Islands, and it has been reported from many sources that the treasure may have been more than 300,000 tons of gold. Over the years, this gold has been used as the main source of covert funding by the U.S. and Western intelligence agencies to manipulate markets, overthrow governments, and enrich the personal coffers of those who have been charged with administering it. This treasure has been known by many names, including Yamashita's gold, the Golden Lily Treasure, the Black Eagle Fund, and many other offshoots. This amazing revelation became known to the public with the 2003 release of the book Gold Warriors, America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold, written by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave. Given that the total amount of gold ever mined in the world is estimated to be only about 160,000 tons, this gold discovery created both a blessing and a curse for the United States over the years. The announcement of this gold find in the 1940s would have crushed the value of monetary gold around the world, and since the U.S. government was the largest holder of monetary gold, it would have significantly devalued our sacred constitutional money. So the U.S. decided to keep this treasure a secret, and what grew from this treasure trove was a twisted, deceitful, and corrupt secret cabal of insiders that literally believed they ruled the world. Every U.S. president since Harry Truman has known about this secret treasure, and the organizations that grew up around it. The institutions that were involved with this treasure are vast and powerful, including J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, AIG, the World Bank, Deutsche Bank, UBS, Morgan Stanley, and the list goes on and on. Washington power players from the early days of Bill Donovan and Edward Casey, to modern times, the Bushes, the Clintons, Dick Cheney, and many more, have used this treasure trove to advance their agendas. Today they are known as the Enterprise, and are now the evil stepchild of the United States that no one dare speak of. From the end of World War II until the early 2000s, this group has worked in the shadows and went virtually unnoticed, implementing covert policies on unsuspecting countries around the world. In addition to advancing their national agendas, they also were corrupted by the wealth that the treasure provided, lining their own pockets along the way. Much of this operation was run out of the NSA and CIA through programs discussed in John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Since the publication of this book, many economic hitmen have come out of the shadows to tell their stories. Through all this madness, the Federal Reserve Bank was for the most part run by people who were not part of the banking cabal, and actually had the best interest of the United States in mind. Many of them knew of the dark side of their banking lineage, but many were not part of the banking cabal, at least not at first. One of the most honest of the Fed chairmen was Arthur Burns, who was a very strong advocate of the gold standard in his early days at the Fed, and also just happened to be the mentor to a brilliant young economist named Alan Greenspan. Unbeknownst to many, Alan Greenspan was one of the first financial computer programming experts in the late 1960s. He was also the world's biggest gold bug. After the U.S. was forced off the gold standard in the 1970s, at the request of Arthur Burns, Greenspan implemented computer market rigging programs to control market prices for gold and silver in order to help string out the use of fiat money. The idea was to run the unbacked fiat monetary system for as long as possible, sucking out all the benefits such as building houses, roads, and infrastructure before returning to the discipline of a gold standard. In order to achieve legitimacy, regulatory bodies such as the CFTC and SEC were implemented with the wink and a nod that there really was a little man behind the curtain who should be protected and shielded from the public eye at all costs. At the time, Greenspan worked for President Ford as the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. Unfortunately, this market rigging mechanism worked too well, and was eventually taken over by the darker banking forces working as the primary dealers of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Eventually, the bad guys took it over and moved it out of the public's view and into companies such as Bernie Madoff Investments, and others that still operate today. All throughout the 1980s and 90s, various schemes and mechanisms were implemented to rig the gold and silver prices, including setting up a shell mining company, Barrick Gold, to process the Yamashita's gold and facilitate the banking cabal's gold hedging scams. Other tools worked just as well, such as metal leasing, swapping, pooled funds, ETFs, etc. Interestingly, it is silver that has been the hardest to control and manipulate and has required the confiscation of Warren Buffett's silver hoard, the closing down of a strategic military establishment in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the buildup of the largest naked short position in COMEX history. Now to the darker side. In the early 1990s, an ingenious plot was cooked up by the Vulcans, a subset of the Enterprise, to crush the Russian Empire in what was to be called Project Hammer. The idea was to create a slush fund of $240 billion in fraudulent, possibly gold-backed, 10-year bonds to economically crush the Russian ruble, loot its treasury, and transfer ownership of Russia's vast natural resources to US-backed partners. Although the original intention of this group may have been admirable as a peaceful way to wage a war, the cover-up of the $240 billion fraudulent bond issuance was almost unthinkable. The fact is, these bonds were created on September 12, 1991 and matured 10 years later, to the day. Believe what you may about the tragedy that befell our country on 9/11, but before you dismiss the conspiracy theories, you must read the Office of Naval Intelligence Secret 9/11 report, Collateral Damage, U.S. Covert Operations and the Terrorist Attacks on September 11, 2001. Once you read this report, you will see that there was very little hope for our nation's future with these evil people controlling our lives. But wait. We do have hope left. There is a group of true Americans that are trying to take back our liberty that these evil people stole from us so many years ago. 9/11 was the catalyst that has led to the end of the banking cabal's 100-year reign. Led by Ron Paul, Alan Greenspan, Michael Mukasey and many others, this group of good guys are winning the battle to take back our monetary system. They tried to take down the banksters in 2008, but came up just short. The problem was, the people of the United States were not ready. But now, we are. Unfortunately, there is only one way to destroy those who control us. That is to destroy everything that is connected with unbacked fiat money. This includes all paper and electronic debts, as well as paper and electronic assets. A global creative destruction event. I'm sorry, but it is the only way. Without destroying it all, we will not be able to remove these evil controllers and we will become debt slaves in a ruined nation, My friends, we are on the brink of the largest economic collapse in the history of mankind. Nothing in the electronic or paper form will survive. It will be very frightening, but in the end there will be a global debt jubilee. All debt will be erased. We will be able to start fresh without answering to those who have controlled our lives for so long. We are close to the end of a very long and very dark chapter in our lives. I wish us all the best in this time of turmoil, and may God bless the United States of America. For more secret information about gold and silver manipulation, visit www.roadtoruta.com.